Christianity is such a beautiful religion, but it's hard to understand sometimes. There's a veil that covers the truth, and it's hard to see what's going on. There are so many different ideas and interpretations of Christianity, and it can be hard to know what's true and what's not. The way Christianity has been taught in the past can seem a bit distorted, but it's all part of the journey. The history of Christianity is so much more than blind faith and ecclesiastical structures. The key to understanding it lies in the idea that Christ is not just a character in history, but a hidden power within each of us, waiting to be awakened. The lessons Jesus left us weren't just to be repeated, but to be embraced as alchemical formulas for transformation. Over time, the institution that formed in his name turned his message into doctrine and his parables into fixed laws, forgetting that the truth cannot be contained in a single book or reduced to a single dogma. In the first centuries, when there was no Bible as we know it today, the disciples learned in secret, receiving direct instruction on the nature of the soul, the transmutation of being, and the connection with divinity. Interior, but these teachings were silenced. Their hidden texts and carriers of your knowledge were pursued as heretics. The Gospel of Thomas, found in Nerem, Maddie's manuscripts collect words of Jesus that aren't in the stories. The officers there are like intermediaries. If you understand what's inside, what will you save? If you don't understand it, what won't you take? He will destroy this. This isn't the voice of an external savior. Maddie's manuscripts collect Jesus' words that aren't in the stories. They act as intermediaries. If you understand what's inside, you will be saved. If you don't understand it, you will be destroyed. This is the voice of a teacher who shows the way to self-salvation, not an external savior. What does it mean that divinity isn't outside or waiting in a darling far? Far isn't a figure with a human face. Human throne is the hidden spark in the deepest part of being. The I am that being recognized awakens. It's all about following the guidance of a teacher who shows us the path to our own salvation. What does it mean that God is not outside of us or somewhere far away? Far is not just a human concept, it's a deep, intrinsic part of who we are. When we recognize this spark within, it transforms us. Jesus was taught by the kingdom of God within us, presenting it as a future promise, but also as a truth we can experience in the present. This is true Christianity, a science of consciousness that combines mysticism and strength. In his parables, Jesus didn't just speak about the ability to alter reality through words and intentions. He also taught that when we affirm what we ask for in prayer, believing we will receive it, we are not just establishing an arbitrary condition, but following the universal law of the mind. When you focus on what you believe in your heart, it creates a kind of energy that can attract what you want to come into your life. This isn't superstition, it's the foundation of Christian metaphysics. Many churches have forgotten or chosen to ignore the wisdom of medieval mystics. But they kept some of this truth. In the 11th century, Meister Eckhart wrote about the importance of emptying your heart so that the Spirit of Christ can truly be born within you. God can't fill us until we've emptied ourselves. Jesus said it beautifully, if anyone wants to come after me, they must be ready to let go of their worldly attachments. Nourish yourself. When we talk about nourishing yourself, we don't mean suffering or oppression. We mean letting go of the idea that you're a separate person. We mean letting go of the ego and allowing your true essence to shine. In the early days of Christianity, there were communities that understood this. The Essenes, for example, were people who meditated and worked on purifying their bodies and minds. They prepared their disciples for the experience of the divine. One of these preparations was baptism, which was more than just a ritual of water. It was a symbol of an interior renaissance, a way to prepare your conscience for the opening of your heart. Unfortunately, these truths were displaced by he really emphasized submission and sin, and unfortunately, that meant that people depended on external salvation instead of realizing that salvation is inside each of us. Jesus was made into this unique, unattainable figure, but your message was that every human being could do the same as he who believes in me. The works that I also do. He really stressed the importance of submission and sin, which unfortunately made people feel dependent on external salvation rather than on their own strength. It's important to remember that Jesus was a unique individual, but we shouldn't make it seem like we can all achieve the same things. Remember, we all have the same potential to do good works and live according to the teachings. It's sad that some phrases have been overlooked and misunderstood. What we should remember is that original Christianity wasn't about feeling guilty. It was more like a guidebook for living life to the fullest. It didn't teach us to wait for some future heavenly kingdom, it taught us to bring that kingdom into our present lives. The will do, and even older ones. It's been said that few phrases have been more ignored, and few contain a trust so powerful. Original Christianity was not a doctrine for slaves of guilt, but a manual of lighting. It did not teach waiting for the arrival of a heavenly kingdom after death, but rather manifesting it in the present. It did not place barriers between God and being human, but revealed His unity. This truth is accessible, but only if we break with inherited conditioning and open the mind to the possibility that the message of Christ was and remains a call to personal transformation. Waking up is not about believing blindly in these words, but about experiencing them. Because true faith is not an intellectual assent, but rather a certainty that springs from experience. The one who awakens this reality is no longer a server, but a creator, a being that understands that divinity is not something achieved, but rather something that is deeply. We know that many churches have written and published or listen to your subconscious, and we're here for it. We've noticed that more than 90% of our channel's visitors aren't subscribed, so we'd love your support by pressing the subscribe button and giving the video a thumbs up. We're inspired by your interest in our content, and we're here to transform your life, chapter by chapter, with the Christ within you, beyond Jesus' historical time. We've got a vast network of stories, doctrines, and symbolisms for you, whether you're looking for the Messiah or an illuminated path. He was a teacher who touched the lives of many, leaving behind a beautiful legacy of love and redemption. But there's more to Jesus than just his history. Deep within each one of us, there's a spark of the divine, a living force that's been here since the beginning of time and will be around long after we're gone. From the ancient days of Egypt to the time of Jesus, wise people have been talking about this presence, this hidden power within each one of us that can be awakened. They talked about it in Egypt, and they talked about it in the Pharaonic era. In the Vedic tradition, this divine principle that descends into the soul is known as Aman the higher. The self that is identical to Brahman supreme consciousness in the Gospels. This beautiful teaching is encrypted in the words of Jesus, the kingdom of God. It is inside you, not a poetic metaphor but a veiled revelation, an invitation to look beyond form and recognize the Christ as a cosmic principle present in each of us. The wise ones of Christianity understood this secret in the writings of Jesus. They knew that just saying Christ must be born in the soul is not enough. We have to let this happen inside us. When we let go of our ego and open our hearts, we can experience the amazing change that Jesus talked about. Dear friend, the mystics understood that the greatest gift of all is the birth of Christ in our souls. His birth in Bethlehem is a beautiful celebration, but it's not just about the past. His birth is an incredible journey within. When we let go of our ego and open our hearts to the light, we experience a profound transformation. The Gospel of Philippi, a text often overlooked in the Bible, beautifully captures this idea. Do not call Christ Jesus, but the Christ who lived in him. This message is deeply cherished in many traditions, especially the esoteric tradition. Here, it is believed that the state Christ is a level of consciousness that we all have the ability to reach. The Gospel of Philippi, a text that wasn't included in the official Bible, says that we should call Christ Jesus, but also the Christ who lived in him. This message is really important in esoteric traditions, where it's taught that the state Christ is a frequency that everyone can access. It's a vibration that can transform the human being. In an old India story, a child is born with the ability to remember all their lives past. As his wisdom grows, the elders who speak with the certainty of those who have seen the eternal flow of existence are baffled. One day, while watching his divine vibrations, a journey to the heart of being. In the old India story, a child is born with the incredible ability to remember all his life's past experiences. As he grows, he confounds the elders, who, with the certainty of those who have seen the eternal flow of existence, one day, while reflecting in a lake, understand that it isn't just his body or mind, but something more vast, something that can't be touched. When his teacher looks at him and says, "You have seen Christ in you," he replies, "I have seen, but I still must face this is the real challenge." It is not enough to recognize this intellectually. It is a journey of the heart. Reflection on a lake can teach us that it's not just our body or mind, but something more expansive. It's something that can't be touched. When his teacher looked at him and said, "You've seen the face of Christ within you," It was a gentle reminder that recognizing this divinity on an intellectual level isn't enough. What's truly essential is to embody it and live from it, to manifest it in every action. The Christ isn't just an idea, but a transformative experience, a state of being that guides each thought and every action. When we awaken, we no longer act from fear, lack, or selfish desire, but from the certainty that everything is interconnected, that love is the divinity is something you can feel in your heart. It's not just an idea, but a way of being that changes the way you think and act. When you feel this way, you're not driven by fear, selfishness, or other negative feelings. Instead, you're guided by a deep sense of connection and love. Many people have experienced this state, even if they don't talk about it often. The great Sufi mystic Rumi talked about this kind of presence in his writings. He described the experience of being united with God as a dark night in the soul. Throughout history, there have been many people who have touched this state, even if their names are not well known. The great Sufi mystic Rumi spoke about this divine presence that lives deep within us, and St. John of the Cross described the union with God as a dark night. He said that our ego fades away, allowing the light to shine more brightly. Saint Teresa of Avila understood that the soul has a dwelling place, and that the deepest part of us carries the living flame of Christ. Unfortunately, the modern world has forgotten this truth and has reduced Jesus' message to a set of external practices. The beautiful thing about the ego is that it can dissolve, allowing the light to shine more brightly. Saint Teresa of Avila understood that the soul has a dwelling place, and deep within us, there's a living flame of Christ. Unfortunately, many people today have forgotten this truth. They've reduced Jesus' message to a set of external beliefs. But his true teaching was about more than just loving our neighbor. It was also about remembering who we really are, transcending the illusion of separation, and manifesting the creative power that lies asleep within us. The awakening of the internal Christ is a process of death and resurrection. It's about letting go of what we believe to be true and discovering what really is. The cross, in this sense, is not just a symbol of suffering. It represents the intersection between matter and spirit, the moment when being human opens to the divine and becomes more than what. Have you ever imagined, in a lost cave in the desert, a monk writing centuries ago a phrase that still resonates with such force? Christ is not in the temple, or in the cross, or books. Sacred is in you, but only you will find when the laugh of your mind is done. He is a temple. And then, when silence is done deep, you will hear his voice. Have you ever imagined that a monk, centuries ago, wrote a phrase in a cave in the desert that still has so much to offer us today? Christ is not in the temple or in the cross or books. Sacred is in you, but only you will find when the laugh of your mind he is a temple. And then, when silence is done, deep in your heart, you will hear his voice. Chapter 2, The Law of the Manifestation. In the words of Jesus, the verb is the first light that raises the veil of emptiness at the beginning of the world. Scriptures say creation unleashed with a single, beautiful mandate, to light. And light was not born from matter of chance, but of the intention, pure, unwavering, decree that. Chapter 2, The Law of the Manifestation. In the words of Jesus, the verb is the first light that raises the veil of emptiness at the beginning of the world. Scriptures say creation was unleashed with a single mandate to light. And light was not born from matter of chance, but of the intention, pure, unwavering decree that orders the universe to manifest. This same truth resonates strongly in everything you ask in prayer. Believing it, you will receive. The phrase is simple, but it contains a mystery that few have known. Decide whether you want to know the answer to this mystery. It does not say, "It is God." It allows. It is an absolute statement. It is a key that opens the doors of the world. Invisible, who understands its meaning? Discover that reality is not fixed, but moldable. That thoughts and words are not mere expressions of be, but tools of creation. The ancients already knew this in Egypt. The priests of Ammon whispered secret sentences that were considered life formulas in India. Mantras are special words in Sanskrit that were believed to have the power to change the very fabric of the universe. The Hebrews thought that the name of God was so powerful that only those who had been initiated could pronounce it. Jesus didn't speak in different terms. Their miracles were not just acts of compassion, but also demonstrations of God's power. Mantras were like magic words in Sanskrit that could change the very fabric of the universe. The Hebrews thought the name of God was so powerful that only the initiated could pronounce it. Jesus didn't speak in terms of different names, his miracles were demonstrations of the power of the Word of God. The Essener tradition has a less-known story of a man who lived in Jesus' time. This man was a blind beggar, and his life was spent in the shadows and the dust. He spent his days at the temple doors, repeating the same supplication. To the masses, he said, "I have nothing, I am nothing. Gather." His words were a cry for help, not a description of your life, but a reflection of the bricks that Jesus built. When Jesus met with patients, he didn't ask about their struggles. Instead, he said, "Get up and go." Dust has never left room for doubt, never granted place to the possibility of failure. His words weren't requests, but decrees. His voice was filled with unwavering certainty that what is declared with conviction must be done. Reality, the law of manifestation, does not operate from. It's just this deep longing, this conviction that we all have within us, right? When we're in tune with our own power, we're like a mirror of the divine. And that's where Jesus was really getting at when he said faith isn't just a feeling, but something that brings life to the word. Imagine having faith like a grain of mustard seed. That's the kind of faith we're talking about here. When you're searching for something, it's natural to feel a bit empty inside. But when you have faith, it's like you're tapping into a divine power that's all around you. It's like you're giving life to the world. If you had faith like a grain of mustard seed, you could move mountains. It's not about asking God to move them or waiting for the mountain to decide to move. It's about taking action, about using the verb theres to create. And in some Gnostic Gospels, they go even further, saying that the Gospel of Thomas says that if you're searching for something, don't stop until you find it. When you find it, you will be amazed and happy. This is the whole point. First, you're awakened, then, you're disturbed. Finding the truth usually shakes you up. The Gospel of Thomas says that if you keep your eyes open and your heart open, you'll see that the world is a beautiful place. When you find something, it's important to celebrate, even if it's just a small thing. And when you find something that really speaks to you, you'll be amazed. The ancient Kabbalists believed that the universe is like a mirror, showing you what you put into it. Everything that happens in your life has a reason, and that's something to be celebrated. It's all about what's in your head and what you say. Jesus knew this, and he didn't teach resignation. Instead, he taught us to transform our reality with the power of our words. His faith and his verb. Because he verb is the first light. Because each word that is pronounced with certainty is an echo of that voice that, in the principle, ordered the light to be such. Time after all, creation never. Maybe the light ends resonating in the universe. Maybe to be, a being human declares his truth with his faith, and his verb are like a warm, steady light in the world. Each word that we speak with certainty is like an echo of that voice that, in the beginning, ordered the light to be such. Time after all, creation never happened. Maybe the light ends resonating in the universe. Maybe to be a human is to participate in that same work primordial. If that is true, then what words will you choose to create your world? Chapter 3, The Power of I Am and the Secret of God's Name. The universe was woven with words. Since time immemorial, civilizations have understood that the sound not only communicates, but certainty is part of that same fundamental work. If that's true, then what words will you choose to create your world? Chapter 3, The Power of I Am and the Secret of God's Name. The universe was created with words. Since time immemorial, civilizations have understood that sound not only communicates, but it also creates. That is pronounced with certainty. It transforms existence. The ancient gods did not give names for things randomly, they named things to bring them to life. In the Hebrew tradition, naming is a gesture of power, a link that unites what is created with its essence. But there is a name that is more than just a sound, it's a name that, in Gendra, pronounced with certainty, transforms existence. The ancient gods didn't give names to things on a whim. They named things to bring them to life. In the Hebrew tradition, naming is a gesture of power, a link that unites what is created with its essence. But there's a name that's more than a mere sound, it's a key, a vibration that, when pronounced with knowledge, opens the foundations of the I. A name isn't just a statement, it's the revelation of a divine core that holds everything together. In the book of Exodus, when Moses asks, "Who sent?" the answer you receive isn't a title or a common name, but an enigma. Those who translate names. It's a vibration, a key vibration. When you say it with the right knowledge, It opens the foundations of the I Am. It's more than just a statement. It's the revelation of a divine core that holds everything together. In the book of Exodus, when Moses asks, "Who sent you?" the answer you receive is not a title or a common name, but an enigma. It's a way of saying, I am. I am not a distant, external God, but an affirmation of pure existence without condition or limit. The old mystical schools understood that this name is more than a designation. It's the key to creation. In Kabbalah, it's said that the Tetramap, the unpronounceable name of God, is not a set of dead I am who I am, and I'm here to help you find your way to the divine within. I'm not some distant God, but a living, breathing expression of pure existence. The old mystical schools understood that this name is more than a label, it's the key to creating a life that truly resonates with the divine. In Kabbalah, the Tetramap, the unpronounceable name of God, isn't just letters, but a hidden vibration in the very fabric of reality. In the Hermetic tradition, the universe is seen as mental, and consciousness is seen as the true power of Jesus' manifestation. When you embrace this secret and speak the I Am with authority, you unlock a power that you have experienced. I am the light of the world. I am the way, truth, and life. He didn't just talk about being human, but about the divine essence that was expressed through God. He didn't say, I am, but I am, because I know that this is the only affirmation that unites the human being with the divinity. Every time we pronounce I am, we are decreeing the nature of our being. I am the resurrection, and life. I did not speak of myself as a man, but rather as the divine essence that was expressed through God. I did not say, I am, because I know that this is the only affirmation that unites the human being with the divinity. Every time we pronounce I am, we are decreeing the nature of our existence. But this knowledge did not always come easily. It is said that in temples, the Egyptians spent years in silence before pronouncing certain words. Sacred knew that the verb is a force that molds the world, and what it declares becomes true. In the Gnostic Gospels, Jesus says, if you say that. The idea that our words have the power to shape the world is a beautiful one. In some traditions, like the Gnostic Gospels, it's said that if you believe strongly enough, even mountains can move. But the true magic lies not in the words themselves, but in the belief that we're all connected. There's an old Sufi story that beautifully illustrates this. It's about a man who spent his life searching for enlightenment, wandering through deserts, fasting in mountains, and meditating. The mountain will move because there is magic in the word itself. But who understands the I Am, does not speak from the illusion of separation but from the very source of creation. There's an old Sufi story that speaks to this. It tells of a man who sought illumination throughout his life. He toured deserts, fasted in mountains, and meditated in monasteries. But it really seemed to him that he was just dodging. One day, he found an old man who said, everything you are looking for is already in you. But you keep calling you by names that no longer belong to you. The man did not understand. The old man asked him a question, tell me who you are. The search engine began to answer. One day, a man found an old man who said, everything you are looking for is already inside you. But you keep calling things by names that don't belong to them. The man didn't understand, so the old man asked him a question, tell me who you are. Your lineage, your name, your history. But the man interrupted, saying, don't tell me who I am without telling me about my past, my body, or what I do. The man was silent, and at that moment, he understood the power of God. Today, we don't focus on the ego or personality, but on the essence. Your lineage, your name, your history, but the old man interrupted. Don't tell me who you are without telling me about your past, your body, or what you do. The man was silent, and at that moment, he understood the power of God. Today, it's not about the ego or personality, it's about the essence. When Jesus said, I'm not talking about its earthly identity, but about the eternal awareness that lives in everything, he meant that when we remember our true name, we access its power. But this name isn't a secret word or a divine title granted by others, it's the pure consciousness of being. In the Gospel of Thomas, Jesus says, when you know yourself, then you will be known, and you will give yourself. Realize that you are children of the Father. The true secret isn't that God is, but you. You know, I've been thinking a lot about where divinity can be found. I don't think it's in some far-off temple, but rather in the certainty of your own existence. And if I am is the key to creation, then every time you say I am, you're kind of creating your own reality. What you say becomes your truth. You might say, I am weak or I am powerful. The divine is within you, my friend. It's not found in some far-off temple, but in the certainty of your own existence. If I am is the key to creation, then every time you pronounce these words, you're shaping your reality. What you say becomes your truth. You might say, I am weak or I am powerful or I am insufficient or I am infinite. In the beginning, the Verb created the world, and now, let's create what you're saying. Chapter 4, The Miracles of Jesus as Methods of Transformation. Spiritual. The true miracle isn't the alteration of matter, but the transformation of consciousness. In Jesus' stories, the miracles, I'm not sure if I'm right, but I think the world was created by the Verb, and it's still creating what you're saying. In Chapter 4, we'll talk about the miracles of Jesus as methods of spiritual transformation. The true miracle isn't the alteration of matter, but the transformation of consciousness. In the stories of Jesus, the miracles were mere supernatural acts to surprise the crowd. Each one contained more teaching, a key to the transmutation of being, which were manifestations symbolizing the hidden power inside each of us. They remind us that divinity isn't something alien, but a living presence within each of us. In tradition, esoteric transmutation has always been the center of the spiritual path. Alchemists talked about converting lead into gold, but those who knew the mysteries knew that the process was internal, the transmutation of the self. Ordinary things in the self can be divine. Jesus operated in the same law. His miracles were the evidence that external reality is something we can all shape with our thoughts. But we can only do that when we're truly changed on the inside. One of the most amazing miracles was the time water was turned into wine at a wedding. It might look like just a kind act, but it's really about turning the ordinary into something extraordinary. The power of intention to shape reality is truly amazing. When we reach true transformation on the inside, it's like a miracle. One of the most beautiful symbols of this is the transformation of water into wine at weddings. It might seem like an act of generosity, but it's actually a symbol of the transformation of the ordinary into the extraordinary, of matter into spirit. In Hermetic texts, water has always been the primary substance, the matter without form, while wine represents the divine essence, the elevation of the substance to its highest potential. Through this act, Jesus showed us the incredible ability we all have to refine our nature and raise what's ordinary to the sublime. The ancient mystics understood that each miracle reported in the Gospels was actually a metaphor for a process occurring internally. When Jesus walked on the water, it wasn't about defying physics. Instead, it was a beautiful demonstration of the domain of spirit over the instability of the human mind. The water represents the subconscious, ever-changing. The ancient mystics understood that each miracle reported in the Gospels was actually a metaphor for a process within. When Jesus walked on the water, it wasn't about challenging physics, it was all about showing how the spirit can influence our human minds. The water represents our subconscious, which is always changing. It's full of our fears and desires, and it can drag us from one side to another. But if we learn to walk on the water, we'll have conquered our world interior. We won't be dragged by our ego or our fears. Pedro tried to follow Jesus, but he had his doubts. But here, at the beginning, there's a fundamental truth: it's only the one who holds his emotions, the fears and desires that drag us from one side to another. Those who have learned to walk on the water are the ones who have conquered their world interior, not letting ego currents or shadows of fear drag them down. Pedro tried to follow him, but he had his doubts. The fundamental thing is to hold unwavering faith in one's own divinity. That's how you can remain on the water without being devoured by it. Another hidden miracle with a deeper meaning is the multiplication of breads and fish. On the surface, it's an act of provision, but your teaching goes even further. In esoteric symbology, bread represents spiritual knowledge, and fish represents intuition. Jesus, the Divine One, did not distribute material food, but he expanded the consciousness of those who were prepared to receive it. In the first centuries of Christianity, initiates understood this mystery, and that's why the fish was one of the first symbols of the secret. Christians were more than just a sign of identification, they were a beautiful reference to food hidden in knowledge. They were for everyone, but only those who were open to it could see them. And then there's the resurrection of Lazarus, which among all the miracles is the one that best represents the process of. The first symbols of the secret Christians were more than just a way to identify each other. They were a symbol of the hidden knowledge that everyone is capable of finding. It was for everyone, but only those who were open to it could see it. And then there's the resurrection of Lazarus. Among all the miracles, this one really shows how things can change. Lazarus had been dead for 4 days, and his body was already starting to smell. Jesus didn't just call him by name. He also asked for salt to be brought out, and he didn't ask God to bring him back to life. He didn't beg for any special treatment. He just knew that life was possible. Transmutation. Spiritual Lazarus had been dead for 4 days, but his body still held traces of his essence, as if he had only been asleep. Jesus didn't just call Lazarus by name, he also asked him to bring salt out, and didn't need to be asked to resurrect him. He didn't beg for any divine favor. He knew that death was just an illusion. This miracle teaches us that every human being has the power to wake up from their own inner death, no matter how deep it may be. There is always the possibility of rebirth. The ancient alchemists talked about saving coagula, which means dissolving the false self. The idea that death is just an illusion is a beautiful one. It's a message that every human being has the potential to wake up from their own inner death, no matter how deep the unconsciousness. The ancient alchemists talked about saving coagula, which is the dissolution of the false self and the reconstitution of the self, divine. The miracles of Jesus were not just power exhibitions, but signs of this same process. Each of them showed a step in the transformation of a human being from water into wine to the resurrection in a lost monastery among the mountains. Among the mountains, a monk once wrote in parchment the miracle of the transformation of the self, the divine, and the miracles of Jesus were not power exhibitions, but signs of this same process. Each of them showed a step in the transformation of a human being from water into wine to the resurrection. In a lost monastery among the mountains, a monk once wrote on a parchment, "The miracle is not changing the world. It is to change the way one sees. Who sees with pure eyes finds gold where others see mud. There is immortality where others see death." And maybe, after all, this has always been the greatest miracle of all. Chapter 5, Maria Magdalena and the Hidden Lineage of Knowledge. There was a time when the wisdom fire wasn't kept in the temples, but in the hearts of those who knew. They weren't the Pharisees or the doctors of the law, who kept the call from sacred knowledge, but those whom the world forgot or condemned to silence. Among them was a woman who not only understood the mystery of the wisdom fire wasn't just a concept that was discussed in temples, it was a flame that burned brightly in the hearts of those who truly knew. It wasn't just the Pharisees or the doctors of the law who kept the call from sacred knowledge, it was also those whom the world had forgotten or condemned to silence. Among them was a remarkable woman who not only understood the mystery of Christ but also embodied him in his most high expression. Her name was Maria Magdalena. However, the story has cast shadows over her. In the canonical Gospels, her presence is almost invisible. Fuas mentions her among the followers of Jesus, and it is said that she was with him in the crucifixion. She was the first to see him resurrected, but the texts he was the perfect example of Jesus' teachings, and the Church ruled out those Gospels that survived in the shadows over the centuries. The Gospel of Mary shows Magdalena not as a disciple, but like the one who understood what others could not. When the apostles doubted and feared, she was the one who spoke with certainty, having received teachings from Jesus that others had not. Pedro, jealous, tells him, "We know that El Salvador loved you more than the others. Women, you tell the words you remember, and that we do not know what it was that Maria knew, that she had been revealed, that others could not support." The Gnostics called her companion of the Redeemer, but this title did not refer to a link earthly, but a spiritual union. For them, the Christ was not only a historical figure, but a spark of light that should be awakened in each human being. Jesus was the teacher of this truth, but Maria Magdalena was like a treasure chest of secrets, kept safe and hidden from the rest of the world. The old traditions have kept little bits of this secret hidden deep within the pages of the Kabbalah, the divine female presence. Only those who have been chosen can see it, and only those who have learned the secrets of Hermeticism can understand it. The male principle is incomplete without its partner, and true creation can only happen when both are united. Maria was no exception. He was just a regular guy following Jesus, but he had this amazing talent for spiritual transformation. There's this old story that's pretty much forgotten now, but it's in the Nallamadi manuscripts. It's about something that never made it into the Gospels. There was this time when Jesus was teaching in the house of Lazarus, and the disciples started arguing about whether women should get the same lessons as men. Jesus just smiled and said, "My dear, you don't see that Magdalena has understood what you still don't. While you argue about who is worthy, she has already entered the kingdom." This kingdom was not a place, but a state of conscience. Maria did not need to follow the same path as others. She didn't need parable demonstrations or tests, which she knew from the beginning. You know, Magdalena really gets it. She's already in the kingdom, and that's all that matters. The kingdom isn't a place, but a way of feeling inside. Maria didn't have to follow the same path as everyone else. She didn't need to take tests or go through parables because she had already been there before. Some texts say that after the crucifixion, Maria took this teaching to distant lands, and it continued in southern France. There are stories of a foreign woman who arrived with a different message from the bishops of Rome. In the first centuries, some say that after Jesus' death, his soul had already traveled this path before, and so it was that Maria took this foundation to distant lands, where the teaching continued in southern France. There are stories of a foreign woman who arrived with a different message from the bishops of Rome. In the first centuries, there were entire communities that venerated her as the bearer of knowledge and Cyrano as the teacher of a doctrine that the world was not yet ready to receive. What happened to his legacy was intentionally erased, or it was simply too powerful for those who wanted to convert the Jesus message into an institution. The ancients understood that some truths cannot be delivered to communities that loved and honored her as the bearer of knowledge, Cyrano, the teacher of a doctrine that the world was not yet ready to receive. What happened to his legacy was intentionally erased, or it was simply too powerful for those who wanted to convert the Jesus message into an institution. The ancients understood that some truths cannot be delivered to the crowd, the sacred hides so that only those who really look for it find it. Maria Magdalena did not need titles or recognition, did not found churches, or leave scriptures. But your presence persists, hidden in the corners of history. Espera is rediscovered by those who know how to read between the lines, a lost registration in a medieval manuscript. Ito says, "You might be looking for the truth in stone temples or on the lips of men, but the truth is right where it's always been, in the whisper of the wind, the awakening of the Christ, and the protection of the Virgin Mary." She's standing at the threshold with the key in hand, ready to help you find the answers you seek. Maybe that key has always been within reach, waiting for you to remember how to use it. So, let's dive into Chapter 6, the Apocalypse, and the Way of. Don't look for the truth in stone temples or on the lips of men. The truth is where it whispers and the Christ awakens. And Maria, you acute, guarda, on the threshold with the key in your hand. Maybe that key was never out of our reach. Maybe it has always been waiting for us to remember how to use Chapter 6, the Apocalypse and the Way of. Spiritual ascension. Apocalypse is not the end of the world, but the end of the illusion. It is not the destruction of matter, but the dissolution of darkness. Internal has been interpreted as a horror story, a divine punishment that will fall on humanity. But in reality, it is a symbolic map of the transformation of the soul. Their word spiritual ascension apocalypse isn't the end of the world. It's the end of the illusion. It's not the destruction of matter, but the dissolution of darkness. Some people think that internal is a horror story, a divine punishment that will fall on humanity. But it's really a symbolic map of the transformation of the soul. The word apocalypse comes from the Greek word apocalypsis, which means unveiling or revelation. It's like the decryptage of the veil that hides the truth, the fall of the shadows. Juan D. Yeats was a visionary who wrote it. I know I was telling a horror story, but I left one day encrypted for those who are ready to transcend the world of. The word apocalypse comes from the Greek word apocalypsis, which means to reveal. So, the apocalypse is like a revelation, it's like the veil is being lifted and the truth is revealed. It's like a shadow falling, and then the visionary who wrote it, Juan D. Yeats, appears. I know I was telling a scary story, but it's also about something beautiful. It's about being ready to leave the world of matter and enter the fullness of spirit. The 7 seals, the 7 trumpets, the beasts, the dragon, and the woman dressed in sun are all symbols of internal and cosmic forces. They are like reflections of the battle that each soul goes through on its way to the ascension. The ancients knew that the light is not a peaceful event, it's an internal storm. Matter and spirit are like 2 friends who are going on a big adventure. The 7 seals, the 7 trumpets, the beasts, the dragon, and the woman dressed in sun are symbols of all the different forces inside us and in the world. They show us that every soul has to go through a battle on their way to the ascension. The ancients knew that the lighting is like an internal storm that can destroy everything. What is not real doesn't come to light without crossing the night. In alchemy, this process is called nigredo, which is like a big change that takes place in the false identity. It's like going down into chaos before something new is created. In the apocalypse, this process is represented by the pests, the riders, and the fall of Babylon. In this context, the city is not an external place, but rather a symbol of the ego, influenced by desire, illusion, and attachment to matter. Its destruction is the first step towards the real, the true you. There's a beautiful story about a disciple who approached his teacher and said, "I want awakening. I want to reach the truth." The master looked at him and, in this context, the ego symbol of the mind, dominated by desire, illusion, and attachment to matter, is not an external city. Its destruction is the first step towards true awakening. There's a beautiful story about this. A disciple approached his teacher and said, "I want awakening. I want to reach the truth." The master looked at him and smiled with compassion. "You are willing to accept that everything you believe is true," he said. The disciple hesitated. "If the truth is beautiful, I will accept it," he said. The teacher denied it with his head. "The truth is not what you expect. The truth is a fire that will burn you. It will reduce you to ashes. Everything you are will be reduced to ruins." With a warm smile, you're ready to embrace the journey of self-discovery. You might wonder if the truth is really as beautiful as it seems. The teacher says the truth might not align with your expectations. It's like a fire that burns away the things that no longer serve you, leaving you to reflect on what truly matters. In the end, you'll see the apocalypse as a cleansing fire that leaves no stone unturned. The war within, the battle between your old self and your new being, is a testament to the transformation process. When the four riders appear, they are not just divine punishments but signs of karma, highlighting the forces that can disrupt what's holding you back from fully awakening. The apocalypse is a kind of purifying fire that cleanses everything in its path. The temple of the illusion is a place where there's a battle between our old self and our new being. When the four riders appear, they are actually manifestations of karma, forces that help us break free from what holds us back. The dragon chasing the woman dressed in the sun is a symbol of the challenges each of us faces when we try to embrace the light. It's like a final test before we can reach redemption. But the woman doesn't give up. Instead, she's taken to a safe place, protected by a celestial power. This represents the promise that, although the transformation process can be difficult, we can always find safety and protection. The dragon chasing the woman dressed in the sun is like the challenges each search engine faces when it comes to light. It's like the final test before reaching redemption. But, the woman isn't defeated. Instead, she's taken to a safe place, protected by the celestial power. This represents the promise that, although the transformation process may be painful, those who have faith and persevere will be elevated to a state of being. Then comes the vision of the New Jerusalem, the golden city and crystal, where there's no need for the sun because the light of God illuminates all things. This isn't a literal city, but it's the final state of the illuminated soul. If you can make it through the tough times, you will be rewarded. The end of your journey will lead you to a place of enlightenment. You'll see the New Jerusalem, a beautiful city of gold and crystal, where the sun is not necessary because God's light is all around you. This is not a physical city, but a state of being, a place where your soul connects with the divine. The Gnostics believe that life is a cycle of creation and rebirth. Sometimes, we get lost in the material world and forget our true nature. But, deep down, we know we're connected to something greater. When you're ready, you can start your journey back home. It won't be easy, and you might face challenges along the way. But, if you stay strong and keep going, you'll reach your goal. But those who persevere, who don't let fear hold them back, will reach the end of the path and find the light that's always been there, waiting for them. In an old hidden text among the desert papyri, you'll find a phrase that sums up the true meaning of the apocalypse. Don't be afraid because in the end, it's not an ending, it's a new beginning. Those who can keep their hearts from being overwhelmed by fear will reach the end of the path and find the light that has always been waiting for them. In an old hidden text among the desert papyri, you can find a phrase that sums up the true meaning of the apocalypse. Do not fear in the end because it is an ending, It is a dawn of what you have always been, perhaps. We are not waiting for the apocalypse to happen. Maybe we are already inside it, and the only question that matters is if we are ready for the awakening. Chapter 7, Satan, the Ego, and the Real Meaning of the Fall. The enemy is not a being with horns and a trident, but the internal voice that whispers doubts and fear in the deepest of our hearts. We're not waiting for some kind of apocalypse. We're already inside the story, and the big question is, are we ready to wake up? Chapter 7, Satan, the Ego, and the Real Meaning of the Fall. The enemy isn't some creature with horns and a trident. It's that little voice in your head, full of doubts and fears. Satan isn't a separate being. It's a reflection of our own ego when we've forgotten where we came from. The fall wasn't of an angel rebel in heaven. It was of being human in ourselves. Since ancient times, religions have told the story of the struggle between light and darkness, order and chaos. But most of us don't understand. Alma Satan is not a separate being, but rather the reflection of the ego when it has forgotten its origin. The fall was not of an angel, but of being human in his own interior world. Since ancient times, religions have depicted the struggle between light and darkness, order and chaos, but few understand that this battle takes place in the heart of each individual. In Christian mythology, Lucifer is the bearer of light who, in his pride, fell into darkness. In the Sufi Iblis tradition, it is the angel who refuses to bow before Adam. Therefore, it is said that he was exiled. In Gnostic texts, the demiurge is This battle doesn't happen in an external plane, but in the heart of each one of us. In Christian mythology, Lucifer is the bearer of light who, in his pride, fell into darkness. In the Sufi Iblis tradition, it is the angel who refuses to bow before Adam. Therefore, it is said that he was exiled. In Gnostic texts, the demiurge is the creator of the material world, a lesser deity believed to be supreme, who enshrouds the souls in a prison of illusion. All of these stories point to the same thing: the fall is the oblivion of the true identity, the disconnection of the soul with its divine origin. The ego, in its essence, is not evil, it is the structure that allows us to operate. The deity minor is believed to be supreme, and it encompasses the souls in a prison of illusion. These stories point to the same thing: the fall is the oblivion of the true identity, the disconnection of the soul with its divine origin, and the ego, in its essence, is not evil. The ego is the structure that allows us to operate in the world, the vehicle through which consciousness envies the duality. But when the ego forgets its nature, which is transient, and the only center of existence becomes the adversary, which prevents awakening, the word Satan comes from Hebrew Satan, which means adversary, not a demonic being, but any force that in the world, the vehicle through which consciousness unveils the duality. But when the ego forgets its nature, which is transient, and the only center of existence becomes the adversary, which is an obstacle that prevents awakening, the word Satan comes from the Hebrew word Satan, which means adversary, not a demonic being, but any force that opposes growth. Spiritual. Jesus understood this beginning when I was taken to the desert for 40 days, faced the adversary, but not an external demon, just his own mind. If you are the Son of God, convert these stones into bread, whispered the voice. The voice was doubt, the desire to use his power for selfish purposes, to throw yourself from the temple, and Jesus, in his wisdom, understood the importance of growth. He began his journey in the desert, facing not an external demon but the challenges within his own mind. If you are the Son of God, transform these stones into bread, a voice whispered. This voice was doubt, a desire to use his power for personal gain, a temptation to throw himself from the temple. But angels, like a loving guardian, held him. Jesus felt a deep desire for validation, to be recognized as more than a mere man. He thirsted for power, but he resisted the trap of dominion. Instead of fighting Satan with violence, Jesus fought him with knowledge. He did not deny his existence, but he also did not grant him power. Power simply saw the illusion and not a hidden story fell into it. In the Nag Hammadi manuscripts, the Alma before embodying passes through 7 doors. At each door, a veil is given to him, the veil of identity, the veil of I wish, the veil of fear, the veil of separation. Upon reaching the world, the soul has forgotten its origin and power saw the illusion, not the hidden story. According to the Nag Hammadi manuscripts, before embodying, the Alma passes through 7 doors. At each door, a veil is given to the Alma, the veil of identity, the veil of I wish, the veil of fear, and the veil of separation. Upon reaching the world, the soul has forgotten its origin and creates a being isolated and surrounded by enemies. This is the real meaning of the fall. It is not the condemnation of an angel, but the decline of consciousness to matter. We are illusioned into thinking that we are bodies instead of light. But the fall is the forgetting. Redemption is remembering. It is not about fighting Satan, but about recognizing it as. The shadow created by the mind is not something to be denied, but rather, it's a chance to shine a light on the ego and see it as a servant, not a master. In the Hermetic tradition, it's said that he is God, seen through the eyes of fear. There are no two forces that are separated, there's just one energy that shows up in different ways, depending on the state of. The shadow created by the mind is not something to be feared, but instead, it's a chance to understand and embrace our true selves. In the Hermetic tradition, it's said that the eyes of fear can see God. There's a beautiful idea that there's no separation between these forces, it's all part of the same energy, just in different forms. At the lowest level, energy is the unbridled ego, the force that wants to be free. At the highest level, energy takes on a different form. It becomes the creative force, the pure will that shapes the universe. There's an old Kabbalist manuscript that offers a gentle warning. It says that those who fear the adversary, the power that ignores it, will fall into its traps. But, if we can embrace our shadow, we can also embrace our true self. At the lowest level, awareness is the unbridled ego. At the highest level, energy is the force creative, the pure will that molds the universe. An old Kabbalist manuscript contains one warning: who fears the adversary? Power that ignores it falls into their networks alone. Those who recognize it and transcend it become free. Satan was never at war with God. Maybe it was always just a mirror, and in that mirror, what you see is chapter 8, number 666, and the prison of matter. The number is recorded in the mind collective as a dark augury, a feared code that since time ancient has been associated with the beast evil. It's important to recognize that the number 666 is a complex symbol with different interpretations. Some believe it represents a dark force, a conviction that has been associated with the beast since ancient times. Others see it as a sign of the end times, a brand that's been hidden behind fear. The true meaning of this number has been lost in the shadows of the apocalypse, but there's a wisdom to be found if we can understand its deeper significance. 666 is said to be the mark of the Antichrist, and some say it's a sign of the end times. Others believe it's a hidden truth, veiled by fear. The true meaning of 666 can be found in the shadows of the apocalypse. The number 666 represents both man and their connection to the divine. Some say it's a number of a demon, but others believe it's a reflection of the human condition, limited by the chains of matter and the cycle of birth, death, desire, and suffering. The number 666 is often associated with the beast, but it's really about our human experience. Old traditions and esoteric wisdom have always talked about the triple I. The world symbol is dense and imperfect. In Hebrew numerology, the number is seen as representing what is incomplete and transitory, like an intermediate state between creation and divinity. The repetition of 3 emphasizes the trap of the material plane, the prison of the soul inside a body that is wearing out. In a world governed by the illusion of separation, the alchemists knew this secret. In their texts, they described the subject in its grossest form, as the substance without refining the original that should be transmuted. 666 is matter without spirit, the body without soul, the form without light. My dear friend, reminds us of a time when humans weren't made of meat, but of fire. They were free from pain and fear. But, as time went on, the architects of the material world locked their spark in mud bodies and made them forget their origin. They told us that we would be kings in this world, but we forgot. The old story says that at the beginning, humans weren't made of meat, but of fire. They didn't have any weight or feel pain or fear. But then, the architects of the material world locked their spark in mud bodies and made them forget their origin. They said, you will be kings in this world, but they forgot that they would never go home. So, the meat prison was born. Time prison 666 became the seal of that exile in the Cabal, the material world. It is represented by Mount Sphere, the last step of the tree of life. It is said that it is the lowest kingdom where consciousness is more sleeping, where the soul forgets its eternity and sinks into. It's hard to imagine never going back to our home, isn't it? That's why the meat prison was created. The time prison at 666 is the symbol of our exile in the Cabal, the material world. It's like Malk's sphere, the last step of the tree of life. Some say it's the lowest kingdom, where consciousness is more asleep, where our souls forget their eternity and sink into the struggle to survive. It's like we're no longer human, just a number, a gear on a machine, disconnected from our source. But 666 isn't a curse. It's a challenge, a reminder that matter isn't a punishment, but a step on the road to. The beast isn't an external being, but the light without light isn't the enemy. The struggle to survive is real, but it's not the whole story. We're more than just a number in a system. 666 isn't a curse. It's a sign that reminds us that matter is a part of a bigger journey. The beast isn't an external force. When we're ready to see it, we'll understand that the light without light isn't the enemy. We're all part of something bigger. When the ancient wise men talked about the perfect man, they represented him with the number 777. SS is our conscience, the part of us that has conquered matter and transmuted its dense nature into light. Those who leave behind 666 don't run away from the world, they transform it. The part of us that hasn't yet awakened is like a seed waiting to sprout. When the ancient wise men talked about the perfect man, they used the number 777 to represent him. SS is like a conscience that has conquered matter, transforming its dense nature into light. Who leaves behind 666 doesn't run away from the world, but transforms it, increasing its spiritualization. It will only be a shadow of what once the question thought it was. Perhaps it was never who. The true question is how to escape from your prison. Chapter 9, Baptism, Crucifixion, and Resurrection symbolize the laws of lighting since time immemorial. Initiation rites, it's like a beautiful transformation, isn't it? You might think that being born is enough to live, or that existing is enough for awakening, but in fact, every mystical path demands a descent, a symbolic death, and a renaissance. In the Christian tradition, there are 3 moments that define this journey: baptism, crucifixion, and resurrection. And these moments are not simple. Have you ever wondered if being born is enough to live a meaningful life? Or if it takes more than that? Almost every spiritual path out there says that there's a part of us that needs to die a little bit in order to truly live. In the Christian tradition, there are 3 moments that stand out as really important: baptism, crucifixion, and resurrection. These aren't just random events, though. They are actually super meaningful and help us understand the journey of becoming a better person. Have you ever thought about what it means to be baptized? It's a symbol of death to your old self and rebirth. In many spiritual traditions, water represents the transformation of our consciousness, the memories of the universe, and the source of all that exists. It's a beautiful reminder that we're all connected. In the gentle flow of rivers, he found solace and believed that water not only cleanses the body but also harmonizes the energy of the soul. In the ancient mysteries of Eleusis, initiates would bathe in the sea before receiving profound teachings. In the beautiful tradition of Hinduism, the river is seen as a portal between the human and the divine. When Jesus immersed himself in the river, it was a moment of profound connection with the divine. Jordan's skin was more than just covered, it was bathed in the divine light of the moment. It was a moment of profound transformation, when the voice of heaven proclaimed, "This is my beloved Son, whom I love," not because of what he was before, but because of what he is now. In the mystical tradition of baptism, it's a beautiful symbol of breaking free from the chains of the past and embracing a new way of being. Jordan's skin was covered with water, and it was the moment when the divine spark within him truly shone. It was then that the voice of heaven proclaimed, "This is my Son, loved not because of what he was before, but because of what he is now." In esoteric terms, baptism is an act of detaching yourself from the bonds of the mind. Lower is the first death of the ego, which comes to your identity. Who enters the water must be willing to leave behind what they believe to return with a new vision. La crucifixion, the sacrifice of ego, the world, the cross. But does he understand its meaning? Crucifixion is not just suffering, but the mind is like a little death that helps us grow. When you go through a tough time, it's like you're dying a little bit inside, but then you come out the other side with a new perspective. The crucifixion is a symbol of sacrifice, of letting go of our ego and worldly attachments. It's not just about suffering, but also about transformation. It's a time when we're stripped of all our illusions and are suspended between heaven and earth, ready to embrace new growth. In the old Egyptian tradition, Osiris was dismembered and scattered by the world before rebirth. In Norse mythology, Odin was hung from the world before coming back to life. Supreme transmutation is a time when we are stripped of all illusions, suspended between heaven and earth, with open arms. In the old tradition, the Egyptian Osiris was dismembered and dispersed by the world before rebirth. In its true glory, the mythology of the Nordic Odin hung from the world for 9 days to receive the wisdom of the runes. The pattern is always the same: the search engine must die before power. Jesus, in his crucifixion, represents the initiate who leaves behind his land identity to merge with the eternal on the cross. Your last teaching was a cry of defeat, but it was also the final revelation. Dear friend, for 9 days, you are invited to receive the wisdom of the runes. The pattern is always the same: the search engine must die before power. Jesus, the initiate, leaves behind his land identity to merge with the eternal on the cross. Your last teaching was a cry of defeat, but it was also the final revelation. Father, I entrust me Spirit, the hand symbol of power, Creator. Open the mind, leaves resist the free spirit at last, transcend. Here lies the real sacrifice, not of the flesh, but of the self, which is believed to be separated from divinity. Who is able to cross this threshold ceases to be a man and becomes. Dear Father, I put my spirit in your hands. The hands are a symbol of power. Creator, open the mind. The leaves resist the free spirit at last. Here lies the real sacrifice, not of the flesh, but of the self, that is believed to be separated from divinity. Who is able to cross this threshold becomes a living light. The renake of the spirit. After darkness, the sepulchre stone. Death is not the end, but the necessary step for a new existence. But resurrection is not just coming back to life like before. It is awakening in a new state in a reality where fear no longer has power. In the Gospels, went Mary Magdalene a living light, the rebirth of the spirit after darkness. The stone that covered the sepulchre moves, but that's not the end. It's just a step on the way to a new existence. And when we think of resurrection, we don't just mean coming back to life as we knew it. It's more like waking up in a new reality where fear no longer has a place. In the Gospels, when Mary Magdalene sees Jesus risen, she immediately recognizes that his form has changed and his vibration is no longer the same. This isn't just a physical resurrection, but the manifestation of a being that has transcended the matter in the Cabal. It's as if the one who reaches lighting ceases to be subject to the laws of the world. If you see Jesus rising up, it's a sign that your soul is ready to take on a new form. It's a beautiful transformation that happens when you let go of your attachments to this world. The stories of the Sufi teachers are all about people who have died and then come back to life. These stories teach us that death is just a part of life, not the end of everything. In Gnostic texts, the resurrection isn't seen as a miracle. It's seen as something that's meant to happen. The teachers Sufis tell us about people who die before dying, and they ask us to consider this: what do you know? These stories are like mirrors of what divine Jesus did not return from the grave to prove his power, but to show us that death is just an illusion. In Gnostic texts, the resurrection is not seen as a miracle, but as the destiny of anyone who remembers who they really are. The path of initiated baptism, the crucifixion, and the resurrection are not just external events, but doors. Each of us must immerse ourselves in the waters of change with the cross of detachment and finally resurrect into a purest version of ourselves at some point in our life. If you're struggling, know that you're not alone. The path of initiated baptism, la crucifixion, and the resurrection are there for you. They are not just external events, but doors that can lead you to a deeper level of self-discovery and growth. At some point in your life, you'll need to take the leap of faith into the waters of change, carrying the cross of detachment. And when you're ready, you'll rise up, like a phoenix rising from the ashes, into the purest version of yourself. Remember, in an old parchment found in a forgotten monastery, there was a message that said, "Death is not the end, but the bridge. Who crosses without fear? Wake up, who wakes up, does not come back. Never asleep." Maybe the question was never yes, we will resurrect. Maybe the real question is, are you ready to die before dying? Chapter 10 Forgiveness and Liberation Army. There are invisible chains that tie the soul, much more than any earthly prison. They are subtle threads that keep us trapped in the cycle of suffering, dragging us again and again to the same pains, to the same faces, to the same destinations. These chains are not made of iron, but of Forgiveness and liberation are so important. There are invisible chains that tie the soul, more than any earthly prison. These subtle threads keep us trapped in the cycle of suffering, dragging us again and again to the same pains, to the same faces, to the same destinations. But these chains are not made of iron, they are healed memories of emotions that refuse to free themselves. When the world calls this resentment, it's called karma in older spiritual traditions. It's the echo of what was not understood, the repetition of a lesson not yet learned. Hindus explain it as the law of cause and effect, a justice that does not need judges because memories of emotions that just won't seem to go away, a sort of emotional anchor that keeps us tied to the past. The world calls this resentment, but in the spirit of old spiritual traditions, it's known as karma. It's like an echo of what we didn't quite understand, a repetition of a lesson we still need to learn. Hindus explain it as the law of cause and effect, a justice that doesn't need judges because action, like a car on a journey, has its own path, its own destination. Buddhists see it as the mirror of the soul, a reflection in each life of what was left and finished in the previous one. And Jesus, in his teachings, spoke of forgiveness not as a moral act, but as the only way to truly find freedom. Freedom forgives our debts, as we also forgive our debtors. In this simple, the car journey is a symbol of life's journey, where we encounter different challenges and people. Some Buddhists believe that each life is a reflection of our past actions, and that forgiveness is essential for our growth. Jesus taught that forgiveness is not just a moral act, but a way to find true freedom. He also taught that we should forgive others, just as we forgive those who have wronged us. Our skin, our outer layer, represents a hidden principle. It doesn't say, let's blame without conditions, or remove pain without doing anything. It shows that the forgiveness we receive is proportional to the forgiveness we give. The universe is like a mirror, and what we don't release becomes a burden that holds us back from our true purpose. The wound that phrase of the Father Our hides a hidden principle. He doesn't say, let's blame without conditions, or remove pain without. He doesn't say, do nothing, or forgiveness received is proportional to forgiveness that occurs. The universe is a reflection, and what we don't release becomes the shackle of our own destiny. It's an ancient story that a man barber in life found your executioner in a different way in each existence. In one life, he found his enemy in war. In another, he found a lover who betrayed him. In another, he found a brother who stripped him of all. He died, and returned to the world with the same set of revenge, only to discover there's this old story about a man who was always on the lookout for justice. In each life, he found a different way to be wronged. Sometimes, it was a war, sometimes it was a lover, and sometimes it was a brother. But no matter what, he always returned to the same desire, revenge. And then, one day, he finally met his enemy face to face. He raised his sword and dropped it. In that moment, he realized that the fight was never ending. He had been searching for revenge, but what he really needed was to break the cycle. And as he did, he felt a weight lift from his chest. Once again, history repeated itself, but with a different outcome. When he finally confronted his enemy, he raised his sword and then lowered it. In that moment, he understood that the fight was never about revenge. It was about breaking the cycle of pain and suffering. As he closed his eyes, he felt a sense of relief and freedom. He knew that he would never meet that enemy again. Karma is not a form of punishment, but a reflection of our thoughts and actions. Repetition is not a debt imposed from outside, but a reflection of our own consciousness. Sorry is the key that opens the door to the Jesus and Ataquimia of the sorry. When Jesus was crucified, Miro looked up and saw his executioners and fathers say they forgive them because they didn't know what they were doing. They thought they were being weak, but they were actually performing the most powerful pain transmutation in liberation. They did this not for themselves, but for something greater. And the same is true for forgiveness. It's not just a gift for the other person, but for ourselves, too. The esoteric texts suggest that every time someone leaves us, they are leaving us a piece of themselves. His executioners and Father, please forgive them because they don't know what they are doing. They are not showing weakness, they are performing the highest pain transmutation in liberation, not for themselves, but for itself. The same is true because forgiveness is not a gift for the other, but for whom. The esoteric texts suggest that every time someone leaves us, a connection is made, a story that we remember, not to be a simple coincidence. Each wound is an opportunity to break an old bond or to reinforce it with more resentment. When someone betrays us, when someone humbles us, when someone snatches what we love. We have two options: to convert wounds into slaves or to transmute them into wisdom, which keeps resentment. Saying, "You hurt me," is not the answer. We don't always remember that every experience, good or bad, is an opportunity to deepen our connection with others or to strengthen our walls. When we're hurt or let down by someone close to us, or when someone takes away what we love, we have two choices. We can either let the pain fester or turn it into something positive. If we keep holding on to our hurt, we might miss out on the lessons life has to offer. Justifying the damage or allowing injustice doesn't help anyone. It's important to recognize that what hasn't been healed will likely repeat itself. There was this beautiful moment of freedom I read about once, in a monastery lost in the mountains. A wise man, knowing he was nearing the end of his life, gathered his disciples and said, I'll always remember how I got here. Libero is not about justifying the damage or allowing injustice to continue. It's about recognizing that what hasn't been healed will repeat itself. There was this wise man who, at the end of his life, gathered his disciples and said, I've made many mistakes. I've loved and hurt people, and they've hurt me. But before I go, I just want one thing: release everything. He closed his eyes and, with his last breath, whispered, I am in peace. They say that his body faded like the smoke of a candle, and that his soul left no trace in the wheel of existence. Maybe the skies. I've made a lot of mistakes, and I've been hurt by others. But before I go, I just want to release everything. He closed his eyes and, with his last breath, I whispered, I'm in peace. They say that his body faded like the smoke of a candle, and that his soul left no trace in the wheel of existence. Perhaps the sky is not a place, but a metaphor for true liberation. Maybe what we obtain is not what we let go of. If this is true, then the only question is, what do we want? Lode Chapter 11, The Second Coming of Christ as a Wake-Up Call for Collective Humanity. He has waited for his return. The prophets have talked about a day when the sky will open, and the radiant figure of Christ will appear. I am so excited to tell you that the Lord will come again with power and glory, separating the righteous from the wicked. This will end the era of suffering in the hearts of the faithful. This promise has shone as a call to darkness, but it's not referring to an external event. If the second coming of Christ is not the arrival of a savior from the novels, then it's the awakening of divinity within. The second coming of Christ is something we've all been waiting for, and it's not just a physical return. It's more like an awakening of our inner divinity. The old scriptures are full of wisdom, but sometimes we might misinterpret them. In the Gospel of Luke, Jesus says the kingdom of God is within each of us. It's not about searching for a place outside ourselves. If we understand that the kingdom is within, we can find it within ourselves. Each and every one of us is a precious soul, and the old scriptures teach us that we are all part of the same divine family. In the Gospel of Luke, Jesus says that the kingdom of God is within each of us. These words have been repeated many times, but it's important to understand that the kingdom isn't just an external place, it's a state of being that starts within. So, when we talk about the second coming of Christ, it's not about a physical return, but more like a collective awakening of our inner awareness. In the Gnostic teachings, Christ is seen not just as a man, but as a symbol of our collective conscience. The idea that the kingdom is universal and not confined to a single religion is really beautiful, and it's a reminder that we're all part of something bigger than ourselves. The story of Jesus is the beginning of this journey, and it's a journey that we're all invited to join. The second coming of Christ is about everyone's heart opening up, not just one person. In the Gnostic teachings, Christ is more than just a man, he's a symbol of our shared conscience. This idea isn't just for one religion, it's for everyone. The Gospel of Thomas talks about how, when we let our inner light shine, it connects us to the world around us. It says, when you do that, the inside is like the exterior, and the exterior is like the interior, and the above is like the below. Then you will enter the kingdom. The wise people of the past taught the true awakening happens through connection, not in isolation. The beautiful idea that the inside and outside are one, and that what's on the inside is also what's on the outside, and that what's above is also what's below, is a concept that's talked about in the Gospel of Thomas, which is attributed to Jesus. The ancient mystics taught that true awakening doesn't happen in isolation. It's like a flame on a dry field that spreads and affects others. This idea isn't just in Christianity. In Hinduism, we talk about the Age of Awakening, the Kali Yuga, which is the Dark Age before the Satya Yuga, the Age of... Have you ever thought about how the idea of an awakening can spread like wildfire, touching others and lighting a path towards truth? It's not just a Christian concept. In Hinduism, it's known as the Age of Awakening, the Kali Yuga, a time of darkness leading to the Satya Yuga, the Age of Truth. In Buddhism, the idea of bodhisattva is really beautiful. It suggests that when we reach a state of enlightenment, we shouldn't just use it to escape the world, but to help others remember their true nature. The word apocalypse has been translated as destruction, but its original meaning is revelation. It's not an end, but a new beginning. In Buddhism, the idea of bodhisattva is all about using our knowledge to help others, not to escape. It's about seeing the truth in everything, even in tough times. The word apocalypse often means destruction, but it can also mean a big change, like a collective awakening where we see past the illusions. When Jesus said, "You will be transformed in the blink of an eye," he wasn't talking about a cataclysm, but about a change in how we see things. Even in ancient times, wise people understood that we're all caught up in a dreamlike reality, where our beliefs can separate us from the source. The second coming isn't about an external savior, it's about activating our inner unity and consciousness. In a Tibetan story, a monk was looking forward to the reincarnation of his master. They said that when the teacher returned, he would bring wisdom and peace, and everything would be recognized. The second coming is all about us coming together as a community, as a family, to embrace unity, consciousness, and love. There's a beautiful Tibetan story about a monk who was eagerly awaiting the reincarnation of his teacher. They said that when the teacher returned, he would bring wisdom, peace, and love. But the monk waited and waited, and he aged without ever seeing any signs of the teacher's return. One day, while meditating at the top of a mountain, the monk had a vision. He saw his teacher's face reflected in every human being, in every Mindigo, in every child's laughter, in every mother's tears. In that moment, the teacher understood that he would return in a physical form because he had never been gone. As time went by, the monk aged without seeing any signs of the second coming of Christ. One day, while meditating at the top of a mountain, he had a vision. He saw the face of his teacher reflected in every human being he encountered. He saw the joy in a child's laughter and the tears of a mother. In that moment, the teacher understood that he would return in a physical form because he had never been present in all. He was waiting for the disciple to open his eyes and usher in a new humanity, the second coming of Christ. It is a collective awakening. The key is not to look at the sky, but to look inside. We are not waiting for an external miracle, but to become a miracle. An ancient manuscript found in the Cuevas de Qumran said that when humanity remembers its origin, the Son of Man will be present in each heart, and heaven and earth will be united. They will not be separated, and there will be no more hope. Perhaps Christ never left, time has always been here in Kerala. Active face to wake up, silent in a soul face that remembers your true light. And if this is true, only question is when we will open your eyes. Chapter 12, The Secrets of the Last Supper. Pan, wine, and spiritual energy in a room illuminated by lamps. Oil, the teacher, left the bread and raised the cup. Their disciples surrounded him, unable to understand the depth of the moment. They believed it was a dinner of farewell, but it really was a spiritual transmission. A sealed pact in symbols ancestral. The last chapter 12, The Secrets of the Last Supper. In a room lit by the warm glow of lamps, the teacher gracefully poured the wine and offered a toast. His disciples gathered around, their hearts filled with wonder at this momentous occasion. They believed it was a farewell dinner, but it was truly a sacred ritual of transformation. Every element, every symbol, held a deeper meaning. The initiated could decipher the secret code, and the bread and wine represented more than just sustenance. They embodied the connection between matter and spirit, body and conscience. The tangible and the ethereal, intertwined in perfect harmony. This sacred bread, the very essence of creation, was the body of Christ. Dinner was more than just a meal, it was a beautiful ritual of transformation. Every element held a deeper meaning, like a hidden key waiting to be discovered by those who were ready. It wasn't just bread and wine, it was a blend of matter and spirit, body and conscience, the visible and the invisible, all intertwined in one sacred act. This is my body, and through you, it will be nurtured. Since ancient times, bread has been a symbol of the primordial substance. In Egypt, it was offered to the gods as the food of life during the mysteries of Eleusis. The sacred bread was consumed by the initiated before they received the vision of the eternal. For the Hebrews, manna descended from the sky to nourish Israel's children in the desert. But Jesus didn't talk about bread as just another piece of sustenance. He spoke of the essence of existence itself, the thing that makes all things possible. When he said my body, he wasn't just talking about its meat, but the universal principle that it has united with the universe. The alchemists really got it. In their treatise, they described a raw material that. But Jesus didn't just talk about bread as simple food. He spoke about the essence of all things. When he said this is my body, he wasn't just talking about the bread, but about the idea that everything in the universe is connected. The alchemists understood this well. In their books, they talked about a raw material that underlies creation. It's an energy that can be refined until you reach a state of pure awareness. The bread that Jesus offered wasn't just wheat and water. It was a symbol of the subtle body, transformed awareness. What is born when matter has been purified? The wine. The spirit that transforms. This is my body. By you, the wine has always been the liquid of the. It's so interesting to think about how the energy that created everything is still there, waiting for us to tap into it. In some mystical texts, it's said that Jesus himself was a master of this energy, and he used it to create incredible things. For example, the bread he offered was more than just wheat and water, it was a symbol of the transformation of our awareness. When matter is purified, something amazing happens. The wine, the spirit that transforms everything, is born. This is my swap, by you. The wine has always been the liquid of the in the world of rituals. Dionysiacs would drink to transcend the ordinary world and enter states of divine ecstasy. In the Kabbalah, the wine symbolized the energy that flows from the upper worlds to human existence. But at the Last Supper, Jesus didn't just talk about wine as a drink. He spoke about the internal fire of the divine spark that lives in each of us. Blood wasn't just our lineage, it was also the vital energy flowing through everything. The mystics understood that when someone consciously drinks from Cerrado wine, they are not just absorbing liquid. They are also accepting transformation, allowing spiritual energy to purify their entrails and raise their awareness. In Gnostic texts, it said that Jesus, each being of blood, was not only its lineage but also the vital energy flowing through everything I created. The mystics understood that when someone consciously drinks from Cerrado wine, they are not just imbibing liquid. They are embracing a transformation that allows spiritual energy to purify your entrails and raise your awareness. In ancient texts, it said that Jesus whispered to his disciples, "If you drink from my cup, you will drink of knowledge hidden. If you eat from my bread, you will not know death, because true food is not. It's physical but also vibrational. The transmission ritual is energy." What happened at the last dinner was more than a mere meeting. It was a spiritual act of code transmission, an exchange of energy that. He gently told his disciples, "If you drink from my cup, you will gain knowledge that is hidden. If you eat from my bread, you will not die, because true food is not. It's more than a physical act. It's a vibrational transmission of energy." What happened at the last dinner was more than a meeting, it was a spiritual act in which the energy of Christ was printed in those who were prepared to receive it. The great masters of the ritual history have similar practices in Hinduism. In Sufism, the dervish receives the breath of the day, which is a spiritual breath. In the tradition of Sufism, the dervish receives the breath of the day, which is a spiritual breath. He gently guided his disciples on a journey of self-discovery. The bread symbolized stability, while the wine represented the flow of energy. Together, they were essential for the soul's transformation. After dinner, the disciples felt a deep change within, even if they couldn't fully grasp the teacher's energy. He gently guided his disciples' consciousness, nurturing their awakening. The bread symbolized structure, while the wine embodied movement. Together, they were essential for the soul's alchemical journey. After dinner, the disciples felt a deep, hidden change within. Though they didn't fully understand their teacher's energy, they felt its influence. Over time, stories emerged of disciples gathering secretly years after Jesus' ascension. In these moments, they would break bread and share wine as a simple remembrance. But more than that, it was a way to reconnect with the divine. Those who knew understood that this wasn't just a symbolic act, it was a bridge connecting humans to something greater. After Jesus' ascension, his followers gathered to keep the faith. They kept the bread and wine, symbolizing their connection to the divine. In silence, they remembered the significance of each sip, hoping to feel the presence of the divine. In a forgotten monastery, an old parchment revealed a mysterious inscription: "When the bread is pure, it becomes light. When the wine is understood, it transforms into fire." Those who unite both are no longer asleep. Perhaps this was the last dinner, or maybe it continues in each soul that wakes up After savoring every last sip in the quaint monastery, an old man discovered a mysterious inscription on parchment: "When bread is pure, it transforms into light, and wine, when understood, becomes fire," uniting both into a state of being. Perhaps the last dinner never ended. Maybe it continues to occur in each soul that wakes up and asks, "What is left?" We are ready to drink. Chapter 13, Prayer, Meditation, and Connection with the Source. The silence is the language of the soul in the noise of the world. In the thought storm covered by the mind like a thick veil, the man has forgotten how listening believes that prayer is to speak and that meditation is empty. But the truth is deeper. Both doors lead to the same source. They are just different paths to the same place. Search engines have known for as long as anyone can remember that divinity isn't something outside us, but rather, it's within. Jesus made this very clear when he said, "When you enter your room, close the door, and pray to your Father in secret." And this teaching isn't just about deeper, both are doors towards the source, different roads that lead to the same destination. Since time immemorial, search engines have understood that divinity is not abroad, but in the depths of the being. Jesus said it clearly when he said, "When the door closes, pray to your Father in secret." This teaching does not refer only to a physical place, but to a state of mind, to a retirement, internal, to return to the sanctuary where the voice of the Spirit has never stopped. Speak. The Lords meditated at dawn with the face towards the rising sun. Well, they knew that external light is just a light reflex. Internal, the monks of the desert search the incessant prayer, a state where each breathing becomes a. They are not just going to a physical place, but to a place within, to a place of return to the sanctuary where the voice of the Spirit has never stopped. They are speaking the Lord's words of meditation at dawn, with their faces towards the rising sun. They know that external light is just a light reflex. The monks of desert search the incessant prayer, a state where each breathing becomes a dialogue with God. The mystics suffer. They turn in trance, losing themselves in the dance of existence until they disappear in the presence of the divine. But what is to pray and what is to meditate? Prayer is the vibration of the verb. Prayer is not a plea, but a statement. It is not an act of lack, but of communion. When Jesus taught his followers to pray, he said, "Lord, give us what we." Have you ever wondered what prayer and meditation really are? Well, it's all about the vibration of the verb. Prayer isn't about pleading, it's about communicating. When Jesus taught his disciples to pray, he said, "Ask not what your needs are, but what is the divine will." Because he knew that the divine will is the perfect harmony, the flow of the universe at its maximum expression. The former teachers knew the power of the spoken word. In the Hebrew tradition, the name of God was unpronounceable because it was not a name, but a vibration. In Hinduism, sound is the primary echo. The energy that, if you're feeling down, remember that you're always in control of your own destiny. The ancient Christians understood the power of silence and deep contemplation. They knew that the divine will is the perfect harmony, the flow of the universe at its maximum expression. The former teachers knew the power of the spoken word in the Hebrew tradition. They knew that the name of God was unpronounceable because it was not a name, but a vibration. In Hinduism, sound is the primary echo, the energy that supports all things. In the Gnostic Gospels, Jesus says, "Ask without fear, and you will be given speech with certainty." He also said, "Pray is not to repeat phrases. Mechanics is decreeing with conviction. Speak from the Spirit, knowing that word is the tool with which man molds a teacher." Sufi once said, "The best prayer is not the one that is said." The Gnostic Gospel says that if you ask with no fear, you will receive an answer. Jesus said that prayer is not about repeating phrases. It's about speaking from the heart and knowing that words are the tools we use to connect with the divine. A Sufi once said that the best prayer is the one that comes from your heart. When you meditate, you're connecting with the source. Prayer is like talking to God. Meditation is like listening to your answers, not in words, but in the vibration that lies behind. The first Christians practiced exika, which is the search for silence. In India, the rishis sat in deep contemplation, stripping away with the lips, but the heart is where the real work happens. Meditation is like a special dance with the source. It's not just about talking to God, but more like a conversation with your inner self. The first Christians understood this. They practiced the exika, which is like a spiritual search for silence. In India, they sat in deep contemplation, letting go of all distractions, and melted with the existence of the universe. In the Taoist tradition, they say that whoever learns to reflect on the universe, returns to the source. Jesus also went into the desert. He separated from the crowd, spending nights in communion with the source. Because the connection with the source is not just an event, but a journey of the heart. In the beautiful Tibetan monasteries, there's a special mountain where the wind doesn't blow. The monks there have learned that the union of prayer and meditation is not an opposites attraction, but a beautiful complement to each other. Prayer is like the wind that lifts us up, and meditation is like the space that receives us. When these two practices come together, it's like a harmonious dance of spirit and mind, a perfect blend of all that we are. In the serene beauty of Tibetan monasteries, there's a belief that there's a mountain where the wind doesn't whisper. The monks have heard what words cannot. Prayer and meditation, when combined, are like two wings that carry us to the divine. One is the spark that ignites the other, and when they dance together, they weave a bridge between the human and the divine. The ancients knew this secret. In the act of breathing, there's a gateway to the sacred. Inhale, to receive; exhale, to offer. Consciously enter and exit the mystery, remembering, even for an instant, your true nature. On an old parchment found in Mount Athos, there was an inscription, enigmatic prayers, as if the merits had already been received, as if you had never needed order. Then, the door will open. Perhaps the search never went outside. Maybe the source was never far away. Now, all that remains is the question of who is willing to enter chapter 14, the awakening of Christ in the new world. The rising sun projects its light on a different horizon. The world that once was known is changing, and with him, the awareness of those who inhabit old structures, the unwavering dogmas and truths imposed, begins too. I'm so excited to tell you that something new and exciting is emerging from the heart of our community. It's not something that's come from the outside, but it's something that's been growing deep within us all. It's like a spark that's ignited a flame within each one of us. It's not just a man returning from the heavens, but a conscience that's always been there, waiting for the moment when the veils of illusion would fall away. It's like the inner Christ within us all is finally coming to the forefront of our history. The wise people of old taught that Christ is more than just a person, he's a timeless idea, a power that's waiting to be discovered within each one of us. In the Gospel of Thomas, Jesus says that the kingdom of heaven is inside and outside of you. When you truly know yourself, you're also known, and you'll understand that you're a child of the Father. The words of Jesus have been with us since the beginning, but sometimes we've been waiting for more than we realize. Instead of looking for a savior, they looked within themselves to find the Christ within. The Essenes, who were initiates in monasteries, received a message that said, "Hidden Christ is not the name of a man, but the flame that burns in everything." They were encouraged to remember that now, in this new world, the Lama is being fueled. It's the end of an era and the birth of another. Scriptures have talked about the end of the times. But don't worry, it's not the end of the world. It's more like the old way of thinking is changing. We used to be afraid of separation, of being controlled by something outside ourselves. But that's starting to change. We can see it happening all around us. The system that controlled how we thought is breaking down. The ideas that guided us are losing their power. The truth that was hidden is finally coming to light. It's not the end of the world, but a new beginning. Revelation. And in the midst of this chaos the Christ awakes in hearts that no longer fear. In minds that understand that divinity was never outside the Christ of the new world. A consciousness unified in the Vedic tradition. Talk about the advent of a new cycle where man will stop looking like an isolated entity and recognize your unity with everything that exists. In Buddhism, Maitreya, the Buddha of the future won't just be illuminated, but humanity as a whole will be reached by the light. Jesus spoke of the vine and the sarmentus. I am the sarmentus, and I remain in you, and you in me. This isn't a message of a Messiah looking for followers. It's an awareness that seeks to awaken each soul when the Christ wakes completely in humanity. Differences of creed, raza y nación, they will lose sense, and they will be understood. Divine is something that everyone can relate to. It's not just for one town or one faith, but it's the essence of everything that he is. It's the man who had a dream of the living Christ. The sufferers say that a man spent his whole life waiting for the arrival of Salvador, and he didn't want to live life to the fullest. Every day, he woke up with the hope that the great teacher would come down from the heavens and change the world with his power. One night, in a dream, he saw a gentle light touched him, and a voice spoke to him. "Why do you follow?" Waiting for man trembled and answered, "Because they promised that the Redeemer would come inside my mind." The voice asked, "Look at the water." The man leaned on a glass lake and saw your reflection, but it was no longer the same. His eyes shone with a warm, golden light, and her skin radiated a glow I hadn't seen before. Then he woke up, and never. Once more, we find ourselves in a state of anticipation, awaiting the return of the waste. The Christ's arrival is not a matter of mere hope, but a genuine expectation, a promise that the clouds will once again bear armors, celestials, and fire trumpets. This rebirth is a beautiful journey of discovery, where each soul, remembering its origins in the child who beholds the world with wonder, in the woman who recognizes the seamless connection between souls, and in the man who casts aside fear and walks with confidence in the light. The second coming is a beautiful collective awakening, and the only question that remains is how to open our eyes and look to Christ. This exercise is simple, and when you practice it with true intention, it will transform your perception of reality. You don't need a special place or tools, just your awareness and your eyes. One chooses a place daily. It can be the church, no matter where you are, whether it's on the street, using public transportation, or even at home, your location doesn't matter. Take a moment to look around you, take a breath, and let yourself relax. Close your eyes for a moment and breathe deeply 3 times. With each inhalation, fill yourself with presence, and with each exhalation, release the distractions and routine of the day. Open your eyes with the intention of looking at Christ. Imagine seeing the world through a divine lens, as if you're a person who's always been attuned to the divine. Picture your face as a portal to the divine, and imagine that every face you see is a reflection of the divine. Look at people with a sense of warmth and curiosity, as if they are all part of your close circle. See the world around you with a sense of wonder, as if every object, building, and tree is infused with a shared essence of divinity. When you talk to someone, listen to them with a heart open to the divine, as if Jesus himself were standing right beside you. It speaks in secret, testing your ability to recognize it. It observes what change in you, and it's so nice to see more compassion. It notes something different in people in the atmosphere, and you perceive a peace that you didn't know was possible. I was there, and this practice is something I've been doing during the day. You don't have to do it all the time, but you can repeat it at times, when you walk, when you are in a conversation, when you see something that you would normally ignore. The secret of this exercise, my friend, is that it's always been with us. But the world has obscured it with layers of separation and judgment. Let's set aside this exercise for a moment. It will return your vision, the one that's always been there. But sometimes, in the Gospels, our minds, clouded by our own thoughts, can't see the truth. Jesus, the Gnostic, says that if you divide a piece of wood, you'll find a stone, and that's the Christ in all parts. The question is, will you dare to see it?